Li Bai, Hard Road number 2. The road is wide, wide as the blue sky, but I haven't followed it. I'd be ashamed to mix with city folk, gambling on cocks and dogs for pears and nuts. Toying with my sword, I compose a song of bitterness. To drag my clothes to a prince's door to sell has no appeal. Out there in the marketplace they scoffed at General Han, and Minister Jia of old was forced to quit. Look here, in the ancient state of Yan, the king would humbly sweep the floor for visitors. With this, he won the loyalty of Yu and Yue, who gave their hearts and guts to serve him well. The king's remains are overgrown with creepers. Who now will sweep the floors of Golden Terrace? The road is hard. Which way to go? So here we have another take. This is another poem by Li Bai, part of a series of 3 ballads on the theme of the hard road. It's quite similar to yesterday's poem. I would say it includes more references to figures of antiquity, but it's basically the same poem with the same topic, the same idea. Superficially, from the title, one would expect a poem about parting, about the hardships of traveling far from home, from friends, from the court, from civilization. But it's actually, in this one, it's even clearer than in the first one. It's a poem of complaint at unrecognized genius. So basically, Li Bai is explaining in this poem, and is explaining through the different examples, that he is implicitly to be admitted, to be recognized as a great figure, that as a consolation for his lack of recognition, there are figures in the past of wise and sage counselors who were not employed despite their worth. And also there are examples in the past of good kings who were wise enough to do their utmost to recruit the best of men for office. And that would be, even if indirect, quite a directly stinging complaint at the ruling emperor, which at the time of writing this poem perhaps might have been Tzu, the successor of Emperor Xuanzong, who almost got Li Bai executed for rebellion because he joined one of Tzu's brothers in his imperial attempts, to climb the imperial throne, or to at least get a position of power. So the poem is the lack of recognition of the worthy poet, who probably wants to be more than a poet. He wants to be an important figure at court. Lesser themes related to this one. The dislike, the patrician dislike for an Epicurean life of pleasures, which was already quite present in the previous poem as well. Thwarted ambition. So let's take a look at the poem bit by bit. So the poem is divided into three stanzas and a final couplet, or a final very short line. It's not even a couplet. It's a summary line that goes back to the title. So the first stanza, let's read it and then comment on it. The road is wide, wide as the blue sky, but I haven't followed it. I'd be ashamed to mix with city folk, gambling on cocks and dogs for pears and nuts. So in this first stanza, Li Bai expresses, he's talking about a road that is wide as the sky. Now, I would need to take a look at the Chinese poem, but possibly the character for road that is used might be Dao, which is a very polysemic character. It means road, but very traditionally in Chinese, it became way with a capital W, that is, a path of enlightenment, a path of knowledge. So the great religions were generally called Daos, something Dao, for example, the Confucian school was Ru Yao, which was the contraction of Ru and Dao, the school of the scholars. So is Li Bai talking of a physical road, or is he talking of a metaphorical road? If he's talking of the metaphorical road, which road is he talking about? The road to glory, to high office, to doing good, or the opposite, or the wide road of the wicked? It could be both very easily. I'm inclined more to the second interpretation because of what he says in the rest of the couplet. He seems to be saying, there's this big wide road, which is what everybody takes. It's as wide as the sky. It's the road that people, the small men, generally follow, which is satisfy your material, your physical, your carnal desires, and be happy, be content. But he says, but I haven't followed it. I haven't followed this one. I follow the hard road, the narrow road of excellence, of good, of trying to excel, of trying to be useful and good. So he says, why? And he explains why he doesn't follow the wide road. He says, I'd be ashamed to mix with city folk, gambling on cocks and dogs for pears and nuts. So I would be annoyed to just waste my time in frivolous pursuits. And he mentions one that was a real pursuit of the city-dwelling folk during his time, which was betting. Betting was very popular. Cock fights and dog fights, it seems to be the ones that are mentioned here. And maybe the bets were money, or maybe if that was made legal, perhaps pears and nuts, fruits, food, as is explained here. So I'd take this first stanza to mean that there's the wide road that the world follows of seeking pleasure, seeking material profit. It's not my road. I reject this sort of life. For me, my dream is the life of service and the life of making a difference. Second stanza. Toying with my sword, I compose a song of bitterness. To drag my clothes to a prince's door to sell has no appeal. Out there in the marketplace, they scoffed at General Han, and Minister Jia of old was forced to quit. So his dreams of grandeur have not been realized. So Li Bai's song must perforce be a song of bitterness, of ashes in his mouth. He is not able to attain success. He toys with his sword, toys with it, because he's not able to employ it meaningfully in the service of king and country. And, the life of begging and peddling and entertaining the small feudal lords and kings below the emperor, all through the empire, is not a life to his liking. He doesn't want to prostitute his talents and to sing sweet poems and odes for the rich and powerful. He says, dragging my clothes to a prince's door to sell has no appeal. This is not what I want to do. This is not what I want to be. And here he illustrates with two exempla. So the exempla are General Han and Minister Jia. They're both examples of worthy men who were, if not unrecognized, who suffered a change in fortunes in their later life, and whose merit and ability and advice earned them death instead of riches. So General Han was Han Xin. He was one of the main companions of the founder of the Han Dynasty, Liu Bian, and as a reward he was a very successful general, and as a reward he was given kingdoms to rule, first the kingdom of Qi, then the kingdom of Chu. But of course he was too powerful and too able to be free from suspicion from the emperor, who always saw in him a potential military rival. So on a few flimsy pretexts, and under the initiative of his wife, the emperor had Han Xin executed. And Minister Jia refers to Jia Ji. He was a minister also from the Han Dynasty, but from the next reign, I think, from Emperor Wen's reign. He was not the immediate successor of the founder of the Han Dynasty, but two emperors late in the line. And Jia Ji was a young genius who started writing memorials and advice to the emperor, and who was recommended in spite of his youth because of his great talent that he had shown at the university. And he mainly gave very sound advice defending the central power of the crown as opposed to the feudal domains. But his opponents were many, and so he was very quickly demoted from a position at the central court to the position as a counselor to one of the princes of the feudal domains in the south, in Changsha, and there he died. So the two examples that Levi is mentioning here are, as I say, examples of worthy men who were expelled from their positions and suffered harsh ends. So out there in the marketplace, they scoffed at General Han. This refers to an anecdote when Han Xin was young, before he had begun military service. He was once humiliated in the marketplace, where a ruffian forced him to crawl between his two legs or kill him. And Han Xin, very rationally, very intelligently, preferred the humiliation to the murder, which would have, converted him into a criminal and exposed him to a death sentence before he could have achieved anything. In fact, the historical chronicles say that when he became the king, the king of Chu, he searched for this guy who had humiliated him and gave him a position, saying, "Okay, you deserve this. It's thanks to you that I'm where I am. If I had killed you, I wouldn't be king now." And Minister Ji, as we told, he was just sent to a remote province where he died. The next stanza continues with an exempla, but this time it's a different exempla. It's an example of a king who worries, who frets after searching for the worthy men. So it's not worthy men not recognized, it's the king, the wise king, who recognizes and patronizes the worthy. So, very clear jab at the emperor, like, hey, you should be doing like this, king. Look here. In the ancient state of Yan, the king would humbly sweep the floor for visitors. With this, he won the loyalty of Yu and Yue, who gave their hearts and guts to serve him well. The king's remains are overgrown with creepers. Who now will sweep the floors of Golden Terrace? So we've already had occasion to talk of the state of Yan. The state of Yan was one of the feudal states, one of the warring states of the springs and autumns and warring states period. It was the smallest and the most remote. It was located in the extreme northeast of China, in the area of present-day Beijing, actually. And the king that is being talked about of this ancient state of Yan, the name is not mentioned, but it's King Zhao. He ruled at the beginning of the 3rd century. And during his father's reign, Yan had almost been destroyed by the rival and more powerful state of Qi. So when King Zhao became king, he made strenuous efforts to recruit the worthy, and among those efforts are the things mentioned here: sweeping the floor for visitors, honoring his guests in luxurious palaces and pavilions. And he got the support of many generals, including the two mentioned here, Zhu and Jue, who came from neighboring states, Chongshan and Wei, I think. And they served him well, because a few years later the troops of the king of Yang almost destroyed the much bigger and more powerful state of Qi in a lightning military campaign. So this was a worthy king who knew how to act and who got surrounded by wise people. Now, of course, this is the remote past. Only a tumulus remains of this king. The Golden Terrace, the pavilion where these events happened, no longer exists. Incidentally, we've already read a poem some weeks or even months ago by Chen Zhuang, which takes place in exactly the same location. So it's if you remember that poem, it was when did we talk about it? Well, anyway, it was a poem by Chen Zhuang about the region of Zhou, and Zhou is the same as the later kingdom of the earlier kingdom of Zhen. And Chen Zhuang has another poem that is not included in this anthology, which describes also the Golden Terrace of the king of Yan. Anyway, we continue with the last line of the poem, which is a conclusion. The road is hard, which way to go? So the road of ambition, of glory, of success, it's a hard road. Only a few can manage to be successful. It's not only necessary to be able and wise, you need to be born in the right time, which was something that the previous poem had emphasized. There is something like destiny in which the classical Chinese believed. So no matter how worthy and hardworking and good and virtuous you might be, if you are born in the wrong times, you won't be able to become an important figure. So Li Bai considers himself a follower of the hard road and a follower who was not able to achieve his aim. But, we don't know exactly what his aim might be, but he has become the most famous or the second most famous poet in all Chinese literature and history. So that's pretty much a hard and successful road he walked down.